We looked at chicken from 14 major U.S. grocery chains: Walmart, Costco, Target, Aldi, Kroger, Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, all of it. 10 didn't hold up. Only 4 are actually worth the money. Here's the uncomfortable part. The biggest problem isn't hidden bacteria or a surprise recall. It's what manufacturers are legally allowed to put on that label, and what the label never tells you. Nobody broke a law. That's what makes it worse. You walked in for one thing: protein, something simple, something healthy. Instead, you're standing in front of a shelf covered in words like natural, farm fresh, and no added hormones, with no real way to know what any of it actually means. 4 terms separate the best chicken from the rest: air-chilled, water-chilled, woody breast, saline injection. Once you know what they mean, you won't look at that aisle the same way again. We're starting with the worst offenders, then I'll show you the 4 that actually earned a spot in your fridge. Number 10. Great Value, the generic Walmart store brand. Walk into any Walmart in America. You see the bright blue Great Value bag. You see the price, usually under $3 a pound, and your brain says simple math feeds the family. Fine. You put it in your cart, you bring it home, you open the bag at the counter. The breast looks pale, almost translucent, with thin white lines running through the muscle like someone drew them with a ruler. That is white striping. It is a muscle myopathy, a real tissue damage pattern, and a peer-reviewed study confirmed it is now the norm in fast-growing commercial broilers. Researchers put a number on it. The majority of skinless breast fillets on U.S. shelves today show this exact striping, and some show woody breast, where the muscle is firm and bulged because the fibers have torn inside the tissue. Chicken bred to grow so fast that the muscle outruns its own blood supply and starts scarring itself. Great Value promised you affordable family protein. What you got was a bird bred for maximum feed conversion at minimum cost, with the visible tissue damage baked into the breed. Before we move ahead, a fast cheat code you can use tonight. Flip the breast fillet over and look at it under your kitchen light. If you see parallel white stripes running through the muscle, that is your first warning. If the fillet is also unusually firm, that is your second warning. The third warning lives on the label. If the word solution shows up anywhere in the ingredients, the bird was dumped into a communal water bath before it was packaged. Most store brands do this. Most store brands will not tell you on the front, so the protocol is simple. Skip the bright logo, skip the low price. Look at the protein first. Now, on to the next one. Quick note before we jump back in. If this is the kind of breakdown that saves you money at the grocery store and time at dinner, hit subscribe and like so the next one lands in your feed fast. On Consumer Alert, we tear apart one packaged food category every single week. Alright, back to it. Number 9. Tyson. Tyson is the name on the package. It is also the name on the chicken nugget your kid eats at lunch, the rotisserie bird your brother-in-law brought to Thanksgiving, and the supplier behind roughly 1 out of every 5 pounds of chicken sold in the United States. If you have ever bought chicken in this country, you have almost certainly bought Tyson. They are everywhere. They are trusted. They are also one of the worst offenders on this list. The biggest tell is the chiller tank. After the bird is slaughtered, it gets dropped into a giant communal water bath with thousands of other birds, all tumbling together, all absorbing water, all soaking in the chlorine or peroxide solution meant to rinse the bacterial load off the surface. The bird comes out of that bath heavier than the bird that went in. The USDA allows that added water to count as part of the net weight. You are buying water at chicken price. The European Union banned this exact practice back in 1997, not because the chlorine itself was harmful in trace amounts, but because regulators concluded the bath was a structural mask over a sanitation problem. If your bird needs to swim in chlorine to be safe, your bird's life from farm to slaughter is the problem. Tyson ships tens of millions of pounds of this chicken to U.S. consumers every week. The 1997 EU ban is still in place. Tyson is still using the bath. Tyson also has a price-fixing record. The DOJ Antitrust Division described the broader poultry industry behavior in 2020 as conspiracies to fix prices and rig bids on broiler chicken products sold to restaurants, grocery chains, and school lunch programs. Your local school district was paying an inflated price for a Tyson chicken nugget, and Tyson knew about the behavior, and Tyson agreed to pay to make the lawsuits go away. Tyson promised you the trust of the biggest name in American chicken. What you got was a 1997 European rejection, a chiller tank ritual, and a price-fixing history on file with the U.S. Department of Justice. Number 8. Purdue. Purdue does something very clever on the front of the package. They have spent years building a brand identity around words like no antibiotics ever, humanely raised, vegetarian fed. You walk down the refrigerated aisle at your local grocery store and you see the Purdue Farms logo and your brain reads it as the safer option. It looks like the anti-Tyson. It looks like the brand your sister-in-law would buy. It looks like the choice. But pull the bird out of the clamshell and flip the package around. Read the small print. The animal welfare claims are technically real in the same vague way a politician's promise is technically real. The actual square footage per bird in many of their standard barns has been documented by welfare researchers at roughly 0.7 square feet per bird at full body weight. That is roughly the size of a single sheet of paper for a living animal that will weigh more than 6 pounds. There is also a lawsuit history. Purdue has faced multiple class actions regarding labeling claims tied to their humanly raised wording, with plaintiffs arguing the marketing outruns the actual farming practice. Most have settled. None have changed the wording on the front of the package. And here is the part most people miss. Purdue uses the same chiller tank process Tyson uses. Same communal water bath, same water absorption, same added weight counted as product. So even if the bird is the same bird, the bird on your fork is partially the water in the bath that you paid for at chicken price. Purdue promised you the worried parent's choice, the one with the better farm story. What you got was a front-of-package story designed to set your mind at ease while the bird behind it went through the same bath the cheapest store-brand bird went through. Number 7. Foster Farms. Foster Farms is a California-based producer that supplies a huge share of the U.S. West Coast, which means if you live anywhere between San Diego and Seattle, you have eaten Foster Farms within the last week. It is the dominant fresh chicken brand on the West Coast. It is also the brand at the center of one of the largest food poisoning events in modern U.S. history. In 2013, the CDC tracked a multi-state outbreak of Salmonella Heidelberg infections that was eventually linked directly to Foster Farms chicken. The investigation identified 634 confirmed cases across 29 states, with the strain showing resistance to multiple first-line antibiotics. The recall was partial. The company's response was slow, and Costco specifically had to pull Foster Farms rotisserie chicken products from its shelves during a September 2013 window after USDA testing identified the outbreak strain in intact Foster Farms product at the plant. And here is the part that has not changed enough. Foster Farms was acquired in 2022 by a private equity firm in a multi-billion-dollar deal that took the company off the public markets and restructured its debt. The brand on the package still reads Foster Farms. The capital structure behind that brand no longer answers to a public board. Welfare reporting from independent organizations in 2024 and 2025 has flagged Foster Farms as one of the producers with the largest gap between front-of-package marketing and barn-level practice in the western U.S. Foster Farms promised you a heritage West Coast brand, family-run, the chicken your grandparents would recognize. What you got was the company at the center of the 2013 Heidelberg outbreak, the subject of an in-store rotisserie recall, and now a private equity-owned asset with a 2022 restructure and a renewed welfare gap. Quick check before we keep going. If you have ever actually returned a Foster Farms package to a grocery store, drop the city in the comments. I want to see how widespread this is. Number 6. Pilgrim's Pride. You will never see Pilgrim's Pride on a shelf in your grocery store. That is exactly the problem. Pilgrim's Pride is a business-to-business giant. They sell directly to supermarkets, fast food chains, school lunch programs, and food service distributors under a customer brand, not their own. You have eaten Pilgrim's Pride. You have almost certainly fed it to your kids. You just never saw the name on the package because the package usually says something else. In 2020, Pilgrim's Pride pleaded guilty in federal court to conspiracy to fix prices and rig bids for broiler chickens. The Department of Justice Antitrust Division announced a criminal fine of roughly $107 million. That is a number that should make every parent in a school district stop and think, because school lunch contracts were directly implicated in the DOJ filings. Your school district was bidding against other districts for the same chicken, and Pilgrim's Pride and its co-conspirators had agreed in advance on the bids. Pilgrim's Pride is also majority-owned by JBS, the Brazilian meat giant, which has its own history of multi-billion-dollar corruption settlements in Brazil and a long-running battle with U.S. regulators over worker conditions and pricing. Pilgrim's Pride promised you nothing on a package because their name is almost never on a package. What you got was the invisible supplier setting the price of your kid's school lunch and pleading guilty in open court for doing it. Number 5. Aldi and Kroger House Brand Chicken. This one stings because these are the value heroes, the brands people swear by to stretch a grocery budget across a whole month. You grab the tray, you see the low price, you feel like you outsmarted the system. Now flip the tray. Both chains source heavily from the same industrial suppliers already on this list, and the fine print gives it away. If the ingredient panel reads chicken, water, salt, and sodium phosphate, that is not a whole chicken, that is an enhanced chicken. The added solution can run up to 15% of the total weight, which means a meaningful slice of the pounds on your receipt is salt water you cooked off in the pan. Aldi and Kroger promised you the smart shoppers win. What you got was a private label tray filled by the same water-chilled, injection-enhanced pipeline the name brands use, just with a quieter logo on the front. Number 4. Costco and Kroger Rotisserie Chicken. This one is going to sting because rotisserie chicken is supposed to be the cheat code. You walk in, you grab the bird, you take it home. The family eats. You don't even have to think about it. Costco's rotisserie chicken at $4.99 is so famous that the company has publicly said it will lose money on the bird forever just to bring you into the store. This is the bird you trust. Now read what is on the package. Whole chicken, water, salt, sodium phosphates, modified cornstarch, sugar, dextrose, chicken broth, isolated soy protein, carrageenan, and a few other items. That is not a chicken, that is a chicken with a recipe on it. The bird was injected with that solution before it ever hit the rotisserie, which is why the meat pulls clean off the bone and the skin is so impossibly even. That is not Kraft, that is sodium phosphate pulling moisture into the muscle and locking it there. The Costco rotisserie chicken label has been the subject of at least one class action complaint alleging the company marketed the bird as having no preservatives while injecting it with sodium phosphate and other compounds that act functionally as preservatives. The underlying meat is fine. The problem is not the bird itself. The problem is the recipe you didn't ask for and the price you thought you were paying for a 3-pound bird when a meaningful slice of that weight is injected solution. Costco promised you the simplest, cleanest dinner on the planet. What you got was a 12-ingredient injection cocktail wrapped in a 4.99 promise. Number 3. Sam's Club Members Mark. Same warehouse model as Costco, same trust, same bulk value promise. Members Mark chicken moves in enormous volume, and the ingredient panel on much of the tray meat and rotisserie tells the same story: water, salt, and sodium phosphate riding along in the fine print. High volume, low price, and enhanced solution counted as product weight. Members Mark promised you bulk savings for the household. What you got was the warehouse version of the same water and phosphate formula, sold by the case. Number 2. Wayne Sanderson Farms. This is the company that has historically been the loudest public defender of the old antibiotic-dependent model. While every competitor on this list was quietly walking back antibiotic claims to keep up with Whole Foods marketing, Wayne Sanderson ran full-page industry trade ads telling the public in plain English that antibiotic use in poultry was not the problem activists were making it out to be. They said it out loud, they said it in print, they doubled down, and then the Cargill-Sanderson consent decree hit in 2022. The U.S. Department of Justice announced a settlement with Cargill Meat Solutions and Sanderson Farms, the predecessor of Wayne Sanderson, in a case regarding worker pay suppression and chicken grower contracting practices. The proposed settlement valued worker restitution at roughly $85 million, imposed a court-appointed antitrust monitor, and barred both companies from using certain contracting tactics to suppress chicken grower pay. That is the largest recent DOJ poultry settlement that does not involve price fixing. Then the merger. In 2022, Wayne Farms and Sanderson Farms completed a merger to create Wayne Sanderson Farms, instantly making the combined entity one of the 3 largest poultry producers in the United States. The cultural identity of the company was the loud defender of the old model. The corporate structure just got bigger. Wayne Sanderson promised you the unapologetic defender of how chicken used to be made. What you got was the loudest anti-transparency voice in the industry, the subject of an $85 million DOJ consent decree, and the only company on this list that has actively campaigned against the consumer labels you are now trying to read. And last, the worst of the worst. Number 1. Trader Joe's Private Label Chicken. This one shocks people because Trader Joe's carries a health halo, the friendly store, the fun labels, the assumption that everything on the shelf was screened for you. It was not. Trader Joe's does not run its own farms. Trader Joe's puts its cheerful label on chicken supplied by the exact same industrial processors on this list, and the store almost never discloses the parent supplier on the front. So the bird with the friendly name went through a communal chiller tank you were never told about, was potentially enhanced with solution you have to hunt for in the fine print, and carries a marketing story with no third-party certifier attached to most of the standard line. Trader Joe's promised you the curated, trustworthy "we did the homework" brand. What you got was a friendly label wrapped around anonymous industrial chicken with the least supply chain transparency of anyone on this entire list. That is every brand we are telling you to avoid. Now, before we get to the 4 brands that actually held up, let me give you a fast, practical test you can run in your own kitchen tonight. This takes 5 minutes. The skin test. Take a single breast fillet out of the package. Lay it flat on a plate. Run your thumb across the surface. If your thumb leaves a slight indentation and the fillet yields easily, the muscle has structure. If the fillet feels rock hard like dense foam board, that is woody breast. If you see white striations running parallel through the muscle, that is white striping. The cook test. Heat a dry pan on medium. Lay the breast on it without oil. If the fillet begins to steam aggressively and leak visible water within the first minute, the bird absorbed that water at the plant. A genuine air-chilled bird sweats lightly and then sears. A water-chilled bird boils in its own absorbed bath before it ever gets to brown. The label scan 4 keywords. If solution appears, the bird was water-chilled. If sodium phosphate appears, the bird was injection-enhanced. If natural appears with no third-party certifier listed, treat it as marketing. If air-chilled appears on a USDA process-verified program, treat it as a real claim. The corporate check. Scan the brand website for the actual processing method and parent company. If the parent company shows up in a DOJ fine or consent decree press release within the past 5 years, that is your answer. Now the 4 brands that passed. Smart Chicken Organic. Family run in Nebraska. USDA Organic Certified. The chickens are individually air-chilled, meaning each bird is cooled with cold air, not a communal water bath. No added water in the net weight. Their bags have 1 ingredient line, chicken, that is the whole label. Mary's Free Range, run by generations of the same family. The birds live in mobile coops that are moved every single day, so the chickens get fresh pasture every morning, and the field gets natural fertilization every afternoon. The meat has actual color variation. The fat is yellower than factory bird fat, and the broth comes out golden if you ever simmer one. That is not branding. That is what pasture-raised looks like at the cellular level. Bell & Evans, family-owned since 1894. Single-ingredient label. The chickens are air-chilled. The facility uses a controlled atmosphere stunning system the company has publicly described in detail. Bell & Evans has been the producer other farmers quietly try to imitate, and the company has been openly critical of the chiller tank standard for over a decade. This is the brand your butcher has probably been quietly buying for you already. Pasture Bird, pasture-raised in a true rotational model. USDA process verified, mobile shelters moved daily. The company publishes its actual stocking density in square feet per bird, not a vague marketing range. Pasture Bird will tell you the number because the number is the argument. Those 4 passed. The other 10 did not. And now your closing receipt. You know why the chicken in your fridge sat in a water bath before it was packaged. You know why a Tyson breast is pale and striated while a Bell & Evans breast is dark and tight. You know that Pilgrim's Pride set the price of your child's school lunch and pleaded guilty for it in federal court. You know that Costco's rotisserie bird carries 12 ingredients you didn't ask for. You know that Foster Farms was at the center of a 634-case salmonella outbreak across 29 states. You know that Wayne Sanderson ran the ad campaign defending the very practices that landed them in an $85 million DOJ settlement. You know that Purdue's humanely raised line and the actual square footage per bird are 2 different stories. You know that Trader Joe's friendly label hides an anonymous industrial supplier. You know what white striping looks like, what woody breast feels like, and what air-chilled actually tastes like on a dry pan. You know what to throw out tonight before dinner. That ends the list. Next week on Consumer Alert we are doing the same thing with a different aisle.